Let's now continue our journey as we move towards the medieval period. The term medieval comes from Latin, meaning Middle Age. This is the period of European history between the fall of the Roman Empire in the West and the Renaissance period until 15th century. It was first introduced into English in the 19th century, a time when there was heightened interest in the art, history, and thought of Middle Age Europe. In 19th century, medieval period was introduced to English wherein there is a greater interest in the art, history, and thought. This may also be the reason why different literary works was recognized and this period produced many imaginative writers. Most scholars associate the beginning of the medieval period with the collapse of the Roman Empire, which occurred in 476. Scholars disagree about when the period ends, however. Some place it at the start of the 15th century. The fall of Roman Empire happened when the Roman civilization began to deteriorate from about 200 CE onward, though in the 4th century, there were several successful turnarounds of this trend. In the late 400s, the weakness of the empire, caused by corruption and various other stresses, combined with barbarian pressure from the northeast, causing a catastrophic collapse of the Roman government. 1066, the Norman conquest takes place under William the Conqueror. The Norman conquest of 1066 marked a dramatic and irreversible turning point in English history. Events began with the Battle of Hastings, in which the Anglo-Saxon King Harold II attempted to defend his realm from the Norman invasion forces of William, Duke of the Normandy, and later known as William the Conqueror. At this period, there are three languages spoken by the different classes. English was the language spoken by the lower classes, Latin used in the church, and French was for the higher classes. The majority of books from the Middle Ages were written in what is known as Middle English, though French and Latin were also used for law and church respectively. Actually, literary works were originally composed in Latin, but some poets began writing in the vernacular or what we've known as the Middle English. It is a form of English after the Norman conquest until the 15th century. Spelling and grammar were inconsistent in these early writings, which can make them hard to read. It wasn't until the invention of the printing press in 1410 that spelling began to be standardized. The reason why spelling and grammar were inconsistent in these early writings because tales was only transmitted orally, and since most of the population was illiterate, books continued to be read aloud to an audience. The oral aspect of literature, therefore, affected the way it was composed. Writers only wrote for the performance of their work and not for a private reading in solitude. It was on the 15th century when the literacy rates rose, and with the development of the printing press, more books became available. Thus, spelling became standardized since readers can actually see the content itself. Much of the early literature of this period consists of sermons, prayers, lives of saints, and homilies. This period have used different literature as its teaching tool of the church. That's why, if you can observe, church and other related activities can be found in most of its tales. In secular medieval literature, the figure of King Arthur, an ancient British hero, attracted the attention and imagination of these early writers. It attracted the attention and imagination of the writers because the story of King Arthur doesn't only revolve about himself, but also with the life and adventures of the Knights of the Round Table. Arthur first appeared in literature in the Latin History of the British Kings around 1147. The following are some of the works published in the period. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. It describes how Sir Gawain, a knight of King Arthur's Round Table, accepts a challenge from a mysterious Green Knight. Chivalry, in particular, shapes the values and actions of Sir Gawain and other characters in the poem. The ideals of chivalry comes from the Christian concept of morality. Next is the Pearl. It is considered as one of the most important surviving Middle English works. The Book of the Duchess, The Parliament of Fowls, The House of Fame, Troilus and Crusade, The Canterbury Tales, The Legend of Good Woman, The Complaint of Chaucer to His Empty Purse are all works of Geoffrey Chaucer. Let's now move on to the medieval literature, poetry. Poems during the medieval period were religious in nature and written by clerics. They were used mostly in church and other religious events. Rhyme replaces alliteration in poetry. Example genres of poetry during medieval periods are romances that can be found in King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. Frame narrative, the tale that was written by Geoffrey Chaucer entitled The Canterbury Tales, and ballads. An example of this is the Robin Hood. Themes during this period usually revolves on religion that shows representations of stories of the Bible and pilgrimages. Second is the courtly love, and an idealized and often illicit form of love celebrated in the literature of the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, in which a knight or courtier devotes himself to a noble woman who is usually married and feigns indifference to preserve her reputation. One of the most important authors during this period was Sir Thomas Malory. Sir Thomas Malory was born on around 1405 and died on March 14, 1471. The surname appears in various spellings, including Malory, Mallory, and Malior. The name comes from the Old French adjective malior, from Latin male auguratus, meaning unfortunate. His surname unfortunate may be reflected his own life because in 1450s, he was charged with a lot of cases, including burglary, rape, sheep stealing, and attempting to ambush the Duke of Buckingham. He escaped from jail on 2 occasions, once fighting his way out using a variety of weapons and swimming a moat. He was imprisoned at several occasions in London, but was occasionally out on bail. He was never brought to trial for the charges that had been leveled against him. It is clear from comments Malory makes at the ends of sections of his narrative that he composed at least part of his work while in prison. This time, let us accompany Sir Arthur and other knights of the Round Table on their adventures. Le Morte d'Arthur tells the story of King Arthur and his knights at the Round Table. Before going to the part where Arthur became the King of England, let us first know how he came into existence. The mighty king of all primeval England, Arthur Pendragon, lusts after Igraine, wife of the Duke of Cornwall. Arthur invites the Duke and his wife to his castle and propositions her. She refuses him, tells her husband, and the Duke and Igraine slip out of Arthur's castle by night and flee. On the advice of his knights, the king, sick with lust and rage, marches on the Duke of Cornwall. While the siege is still on, Merlin the magician arranges a pact with King Arthur. He will transform Arthur into the image of the Duke and get him to bed with Igraine. The condition is that the child who will be conceived on this night shall go to Merlin for rearing as he sees it. The child is conceived hours after the real Duke's death, and King Arthur later marries the widow. On the same morning, by King Arthur's request, 2 fellow kings, Lot and Dantres, marry 2 of Arthur's daughters, and the 3rd daughter, Morgan Le Fay, is put to school in a nunnery and becomes a necromancer. She later marries King Oriens. Months later, the child who named Arthur was born and delivered unchristened to Merlin. 2 years have passed, and this time, Arthur's enemies strike at him repeatedly, killing many of his people. Because of that, King Arthur slowly gets sick, and in the hour of his death, Merlin gets him to proclaim his son, Arthur, the future king of England. After Arthur's death, the kingdom is in jeopardy. Merlin goes to the Archbishop of Canterbury, tells him a miracle is coming soon, and advises him to assemble all the lords of the kingdom at Christmas. They come and find the sword lodged in the stone, and on it the legend, "Who's pulled out this sword from the stone and anvil is duly born king of all England. No man can budge it," and to keep them in hand, the Archbishop arranges a New Year's Day tournament. To this tournament, a knight of low station, Sir Ector, comes with his son Kai and Merlin with Arthur. Arthur is son of King Arthur Pendragon but was raised by another family, takes his rightful place as king when as a boy, he is able to pull the sword called Excalibur from the stone. On the way, Kai loses his sword and sends Arthur back. Arthur brings the sword from the stone. When they hear this, the barons are outraged at the thought of being ruled by a boy. They postpone their decision on Arthur's kingship again and again, but at last accept it. At the urging of the commons, and Arthur is crowned. Although he rules wisely and is counseled by Merlin the magician, Arthur makes enemies of other kings and is often at war. Arthur has himself crowned in Wales, and the mightiest kings of his time come to the coronation. The king was pleased, thinking that the other kings came because of love and respect, but he was wrong because their intention was to fight him. Merlin goes to talk with the hostile kings and told them of Arthur's lineage and arranges a parley. However, the parley fails. War begins, and with the help of his magical sword Excalibur, gleaming in his enemies' eyes like 20 torches, Arthur routs his enemies. After that, he returns to London, and there, Merlin gives him a three-part plan of war. If it wasn't because of Merlin's plan, King Arthur wouldn't be able to see Guinevere, the daughter of King Leodegrance, whom they helped to win his war. When Arthur marries Guinevere, her father gives Arthur the Round Table, at which 150 men can sit. At the request of his lords, who are concerned about Arthur's founding a royal line, Arthur marries Guinevere, and this idea is against Merlin's advice. As dowry, her father Leodegrance gives Arthur the Round Table. Merlin gathers knights to fill as many of the 150 seats as he can. Arthur dubs two young knights, Lot's son Gawain and the bastard son of Sir Pellinore. At the wedding feast, each of the two new knights, along with Sir Pellinore, get knightly work to do. Guinevere, who is often present at the convening of the Round Table, acts as a moral compass for the knights, rewarding knights who behave well and chastising those who choose poorly. For Arthur's knights, Guinevere represents the stability of rule which comes from the founding of a legitimate line of succession. As judge of the knights' adventures, she also serves as the court spokesman for love. She imposes on Gawain the penance of special devotion to mercy and special service to ladies. She approves Sir Tor, whose charity and respect for ladies is flawless. Arthur is nearly betrayed by his sister Morgana Le Fay, but he is helped by Nynaeve, a sorceress who learned her magic powers from Merlin before killing him. Merlin falls doubtingly in love with a maiden Sir Pellinore brought into court, named Nynaeve. She is afraid to lie with Merlin because he is a devil's son, and in his company, she is ever present wary of him, but she hides her disgust in order to learn the secrets of Merlin's art. She travels with him to the court of Sir Ben, where Merlin predicts fame for Ben's son, Lancelot. Afterward, through magic, Nynaeve seals Merlin in a cave. On the same time, Sir Bagdemagus is angry. He leaves the court, resolving not to return until he has proved his worth. He finds the sign of the Grail, evidence that he is right in his judgment of himself. And later on, he found the cave where Merlin is sealed up alive. Merlin tells him that no one but Nynaeve can free him, and Bagdemagus rides on. It is on the second tale of the book wherein Nynaeve helped Arthur from the plan of Morgan Le Fay's attempted murder of him. Riding in pursuit of a great heart, Arthur, Accolon, and King Orience come upon an enchanted voyage, where they are given a feast, then shown to splendid beds. Through Morgan's magic, Morgan's husband, King Orience, awakens in her own arms, Accolon, her beloved, awakens at the edge of an enchanted well, and Arthur awakens in the dungeon of the cowardly King Damas. He imprisons and starts errant knights in hopes of forcing one to fight for him against his brother. an honorable king of whom Damas is jealous. Arthur agrees to fight for Damas in order to free the other knights. Meanwhile, Accolon is given Arthur's sword and scabbard by Morgan, who loves him and hopes to make him king and herself his queen. She arranges it that Accolon fights for Damas's brother. Thus, Accolon and Arthur fight, neither one knowing the other, with magic on Accolon's side. Nynaeve, knowing Morgan's plan, comes to Arthur's aid and he is able to defeat Accolon. And few days later, Accolon died. Arthur then fights Romans when Imperial Lucius of Rome demands that Arthur bows to him. Although the war requires several battles, Arthur and his knights win and return to Guinevere and the other wives. Emperor Lucius of Rome sends messengers to Arthur's court demanding tribute. Though Arthur is furious, he controls himself and takes counsel with his knights. Sir Cador is delighted with the possibility of honorable war. The King of Wales vows vengeance on the Viscount of Rome, who once treated him shamefully. The young Lancelot du Lake eagerly offers his aid, and the remaining knights also pledge their full support. Along with their journey, Lancelot and Cador meet an ambush of Romans. The British force is small and weak, but the older knights make knights of their squires and fight heroically. In the end, largely through Lancelot's incredible fight ability, the Romans are overwhelmed, nearly all of them being killed. The British return to Arthur and report the victory and their own minor losses. Meanwhile, Romans who make it back to Lucius beg him to drop his hopeless war against Arthur. Lucius scoffs and launches a new attack. In this battle, the Welsh king fulfills vow to destroy the Viscount of Rome. Lancelot steals Lucius' banner, and all the other great knights, Cador, Kai, Gawain, Bors, Pelias, Marhold, and others, fight better than ever before. After the long fight they had, Arthur moves on to be crowned in Rome, distributes land and wealth, and at last, at the request of his nobles, they have been too long parted from their wives. They say he returns back toward England, where Guinevere and the other wives joyfully welcome him and all his troops. Soon after, Lancelot establishes himself as the greatest knight in all the world by his virtue, loyalty, and bravery. Lancelot du Lake returns from Rome most honored of all Arthur's knights and therefore most prized by the king. He decides to seek knightly adventures, presumably to win still greater renown. He even admits that he never wants to marry, since he fears marriage would prevent him from seeking adventure. He made many things along his journey, such as killing the powerful Tarquin, which led him to free Tarquin's prisoners. He also killed a thief and a rapist who has been troubling the maidens, and his defeat of the giant monsters. On the road again, he comes to a lady who asks that he retrieve her falcon from the elm tree, for if the hawk gets away, her lord will kill her. Lancelot takes off his armor and gets the hawk. While he is up there, naked and unarmed, the lady's husband appears. The falcon was a trick, and the husband is here to murder him. Lancelot breaks off a branch, fights with that, and kills his would-be assassin. At the Feast of Pentecost, all Lancelot's great deeds are made known and he is acknowledged the greatest knight in the world. Tristram, who is son of King Meliodas de Liones and the sister of King Mark of Cornwall, is then introduced and his adventures unfold. In the days when Merlin was still free, King Meliodas de Liones married the sister of King Mark of Cornwall, and had a son by her called Tristram. The circumstances of his birth are vaguely analogous to those attending the birth of Arthur, the death of a parent. But in this case, it is Tristram's mother, while in Arthur's case, it is his father. 7 years later, King Meliodas marries again. His new wife, wishing that her own sons might succeed to the throne, plots to kill Tristram. When her plot is discovered, she is sentenced to birth, but Tristram himself pleads mercy for her and saves her. Meliodas sends Tristram to France, where he becomes a great huntsman and harper. At 18, he returns to his father's hall. He kills Sir Marhault to free his uncle from a debt owed to King Anguish of Ireland, and then falls in love with Isoude, Anguish's daughter. Isoude marries Tristram's uncle, Mark, but Tristram and Isoude remain lovers. Tristram distinguishes himself by killing Marhault and thus freeing King Mark of a debt of tribute owed to King Anguish of Ireland. But after the fight, Tristram has wounds that cannot be healed except back in Ireland. He returns, taking his harp, and is soon called to Anguish's court to play. He goes, converting his name to Tramtrist, and says nothing of his fight with Marhault, the queen's brother. Anguish's daughter Isoude heals Tristram and they fall in love. King Anguish offers Tristram any gift he might ask, and Tristram requests Isoude, not for himself but for Mark, as his mission requires. Isoude and Tristram sail for Mark's court in Cornwall. On the way, a love potion prepared for Isoude and King Mark accidentally falls into the hands of Tristram and Isoude, who unwittingly drink it and thus seal their unlucky love. Before reaching Cornwall, Tristram has further adventures, which by chance parallel adventures Lancelot is undergoing at the same time. Then the lovers arrive at court. Isoude and Mark are married, but she and Tristram remain lovers. Tristram meanwhile reaches Cornwall and Isoude. He discovers love letters that have passed between her and another man. He runs naked for a time, then recovers and is exiled by Mark. In exile, he encounters the Round Table Knights who are looking for Arthur. He beats many of them, helps Lancelot when his life is threatened by Morgan le Fay, helps Gawain, and enters a tournament near the Castle of Maidens. At the tournament, he tells no one his name, fights under the title The Knight with the Black Shield, and on the first 2 days departs secretly after he has won the field. On the third day, he beats and shames his old enemy Palomides, fights Arthur himself to a standstill. Then he is wounded almost mortally by an accidental stroke from Lancelot. He flees to a forest. Palomides follows him to kill him, but despite his wound, Tristram beats Palomides. Then Gawain's brother Gaheris. Lancelot, still at the tournament, is declared winner of the field but gives the prize to Tristram as more deserving. 10 of Arthur's best men go to find Tristram. Lancelot, riding in the wrong direction, rescues the damsel. Lucan and Gawain unwittingly fight with Tristram and are beaten. Tristram is finally found not by Arthur's men, but by an enemy, the father of a man he killed in the tournament. And eventually, Tristram falls sick. Tristram rides to the appointed place for his fight with Palomides, the town of Blanchard, where long ago Merlin prophesied that the two greatest knights and the two greatest friends in the world would fight. There he finds the knight with the covered shield and fights him. At last, both badly wounded, Tristram and Lancelot discover one another's identity and the fight stops. They go to Camelot, where Lancelot explains that, riding incognito, he was forced into battle with Round Table Knights. Tristram is made a knight of the Round Table, and all the court rejoices. Riding in search of adventure, Lancelot comes upon a castle where a beautiful lady has been under a curse for 5 years. He kills a dragon, meets Pelias, son of the maimed king, and sees the Grail. By a trick, Lancelot is made to lie with Pelias' daughter Elaine, and that night Galahad is conceived. Soon after, Arthur has a feast for his knights, and Lady Elaine comes to it. Lancelot is again tricked into lying with her. Guinevere discovers it and banishes him. Lancelot leaps out a window and runs road from grief. Arthur's knights ride off to hunt for him and have various adventures, including some involving the Grail. Lancelot meanwhile goes from place to place, until the Lady Elaine recognizes him and through her father, arranges for his healing by the Grail, believing he is still banished from England. Lancelot asks lodgings from Peleus. He is given a castle which he names the Joyous Isle, and there he lives under a false name, with Elaine as his servant. In this castle, Percival and Hector eventually find him. They return with him to Arthur's Hall just in time for the feast of Pentecost, and all the court rejoices at his return. At the feast of Pentecost, a damsel comes and asks that Sir Lancelot come with her. He goes and meets Galahad, his son, makes him a knight, and invites him to court. Lancelot rides to court ahead. Magic writing appears on the Siege Perilous, the seat at the round table which no man has yet been worthy enough to fill, and revealing that the seat will be filled today. Then Arthur and his court hear of a sword in a floating stone, and on the pommel a legend claiming that this sword belongs to the best knight in the world. The king suggests that the sword belongs to Lancelot, but Lancelot says no and refuses to try to draw it out. The sword has a course, and it says, "The man who tries to pull it out and fails will get a grievous wound from it later." Then, awakening, Hector and Gawain see a hand holding a bridle and bearing a candle into the chapel. A voice calls them knights full of evil faith and poor belief, and tells them these two things have failed them. They go to find a hermit who can interpret these signs, and on the way encounter a knight who offers battle. Gawain fights and accidentally kills the man, a fellow Round Table knight, Sir Ivaine. Hector and Gawain bury him, then go on to the hermit. The hermit explains that the meadow of Gawain's dream represents that the Round Table and also the virtues humility and patience, which are always green and vital. The black bulls represent proud and sinful knights. They grow lean, that is, their group is decimated, and for lack of humility and patience. The white bulls are sinless knights whose humility is represented by the robes. As for the two pure white bulls, Galahad and Percival, and the spotted white bull, Bors, two of these will vanish and one will return. While in Hector's dream, the chair signifies the royal line from which both Hector and Lancelot are born. Lancelot's fall means that he has humbled himself. The knotted coat is his humiliation of the flesh. The ass represents his humility. The sinking well refers to God's grace, now withdrawn from him. He shall suffer 24 days at the hands of the devil, one for each year of sin, then return to Camelot. The hand with the bridle, seen by both Gawain and Hector, signifies the Holy Ghost, where charity abides and abstinence. The candle represents the way of Christ. Hector and Gawain, lacking charity, abstinence, and truth, will not achieve the Grail quest. Lancelot and the other old holy men see a devil sitting over a corpse in a splendid shirt. The devil tells them the dead man was a good man who was killed in a fire, which did not sink a hair on his body. He is now in heaven. Then the devil leaves and they bury the corpse. The holy man tells Lancelot to take some of the dead man's hair and put it next to his skin, and to eat no meat and drink no wine if he hopes to have any success. Lancelot obeys and rides on. He meets a lady on a white palfrey who tells him he has in the past been closer than he is now to the adventure he seeks. Then tells him he will find good lodging tomorrow, but not tonight. That night, sleeping in the forest, Lancelot dreams that God comes down. Aride blesses 9 knights, but rebukes one of them as having wasted himself on worldliness. From a hermit, Lancelot learns that the first 7 knights are his ancestors, the sinful 8th knight is himself, and the 9th, Galahad. Riding on, Lancelot comes to a castle and a tournament of black knights against white. He joins the black because they are weaker, so that helping them to victory will mean greater honor for Lancelot. but he is driven out by the knights in white. He rests under an apple tree, where an old man comes to him in his sleep and reproaches him as evil, faithless, and full of sin. An old woman explains the symbolism of the tournament among those knights of Arthur's court who took on themselves the Grail quest. Some were pure, some sinful, and the sinful will fail. Enjoining the Black Knights from vainglory, Lancelot chose the side suitable to him. That night, Lancelot encounters the man on the black horse, who attacks and slays Lancelot's horse just as he earlier slew Percival's. Guided by a voice, Lancelot enters the ship of Percival's dead sister. After a month he meets Sir Galahad at a landing and takes him aboard. They sail on together, encountering many adventures. Half a year passes, then a white knight brings Galahad a horse and calls him out of the ship and Lancelot's company. A voice tells them they are parting until Judgment Day. Lancelot finds his way to Castle Carbenek, where the Grail is, and gets a glimpse of the Grail, but is struck down and thus miraculously prevented from drawing near. He lies in a coma for 24 days, then leaves the castle and turns back to Camelot. With the object of finding Galahad and overcoming him for his own greater glory, Percival asks an old recluse about Galahad's whereabouts. The recluse, Percival's aunt, tells him that his mother is dead from sorrow at his abandoning her for the fellowship of the Round Table, and that the Round Table was created by Merlin as a symbol of the world, a place of false security which can lead to overweening pride. By Merlin's prophecy, only 3 Round Table knights shall achieve the Grail quest: 2 virgin knights and 1 who is chaste, and the best of this is Galahad. Percival repents his proud wish to beat Galahad for glory, and his aunt tells him the way. Riding on, he comes upon a wounded knight 400 years old, Sir Evelake, or Mordrains, who in the days of Joseph of Arimathea asked God that he not be allowed to die until he had seen the knight who would achieve the Grail quest. The Lord granted Evelake's wish and promised that when Sir Evelake saw the Grail Knight, he would at last be healed. Percival goes to find Galahad for him, but is attacked by 20 knights who manage to kill his horse before Galahad saves Percival's life. Galahad then rides away again, still insisting on pursuing the quest alone. Percival walks in the forest, gets the gift of a hackney from a distressed squire, meets with a man on a black horse who kills the hackney and scornfully rides off. Immediately afterward, the 3 kings are thrown into prison by a Saracen. But prison is no discomfort. The Grail comes to them and spreads peace. After a time, the Saracen king falls sick, pulls them out of prison to ask their forgiveness, and dies. The city, guided by a voice out of heaven, makes Galahad king. At the year's end, Galahad sees a vision of Christ among his angels and heaven. Percival becomes a religious hermit. Bors eventually returns to Arthur's sadly diminished court. Because of the things that Lancelot did to her, such as honesty, loyalty, and faithfulness. Gawain's brothers Agravain and Mordred, hating the queen and Lancelot, speak of their adulterous love before numerous knights. Agravain and Mordred nevertheless inform Arthur, who in fact has known for a long time and has ignored the matter for love of them both. Arthur judges Guinevere to be burnt, as law requires. Gawain pleads against it and refuses to have any part in it. His brothers Gareth and Gaheris beg to be excused as executioners or guards. All Lancelot's house urges him to rescue the queen, as he himself desires, and so, when the queen is lashed to the stake, Lancelot comes, kills all those standing around her including Gareth and Gaheris, who are unarmed, and takes her with him to Joyous Gard. When Gawain hears of the death of his brothers, he drops his love for Lancelot and swears he will be avenged. He persuades Arthur to lay siege to Joyous Gard. Arthur and Lancelot parley, and Arthur is ready to drop the siege, but Gawain will not hear of it. The Pope requires Arthur and Lancelot to make peace and orders Lancelot to return Guinevere to the king. Lancelot obeys. Gawain reaffirms his vow of vengeance, and Lancelot is banished, as was Tristram, and returns to his own country with all his forces. Mordred makes himself king of England and incestuously claims Guinevere as his wife. Guinevere escapes to the Tower of London. The Bishop of Canterbury reproaches Mordred for his usurpation and would-be incest, and when Mordred tries to kill him, he flees and becomes a hermit. Mordred wins many Englishmen to his side, then meets Arthur at Dover, but is forced to retreat from her. After the prophetic dream, he has another. Gawain and a number of ladies come to him to warn him against fighting in the morning, for if Arthur fights, he will die. If he waits for a month, Lancelot will be here to help him. Then Gawain and the ladies vanish. At the end of the day, Mordred is the only man of his army left standing, and Arthur has only two knights, Sir Lucan and Sir Bedivere. Against Sir Lucan's advice, Arthur fights Mordred and kills him, but he gets his own death wound as he does it. When Lancelot hears of the death of Arthur and Gawain, he comes to England in haste. He looks for the queen and finds her in a nunnery. For love of Guinevere, as much as for remorse, he takes on the habit of a priest. Guided by visions, he goes to Almesbury, where he finds Guinevere dead. He buries her beside King Arthur, then seconds the dice himself. He is buried at Joyous Gard. Constantine reigns after Arthur, but the scant remnants of the Round Table are dispersed. Bors, Hector, Lamore, and Bleoberis go to the Holy Land to fight the infidel. The rest simply wander off, and the tragedy was finished. That is the end of the story of King Arthur and his knights at the Round Table.